The only thing more complicated than a restaurant in crisis is one run by a dysfunctional family. Gordon Ramsay has dealt with many family businesses on kitchen nightmares, but the Saffron family of Burger Kitchen was undoubtedly his biggest challenge. In these episodes, we didn't see Ramsay as a chef or a businessman, but as a psychologist. A father who stole money from his son to fulfill his dream, a son who had to assume that nightmare, and a mother who can't communicate with either of them. But they are pretty good at yelling and insulting each other. The restaurant already seemed almost doomed before Ramsay's arrival, but did they adapt to his renovations? And more importantly, did the Saffrons learn to communicate and accept each other as a family? Let's first recap what happened in the episode, and then find out what happened after the episode aired. Also, we will look at where the Saffrons are today. At the start of this two-part episode, we travel to Los Angeles, California, to Burger Kitchen, a gourmet burger restaurant opened in 2010 by Alan Saffron and his wife Jen. Originally from Australia, Alan at one time dreamed of opening a steakhouse, but since he didn't have enough money when he arrived in LA, he decided to borrow some money from his son, Daniel. But first, what money? Well, Alan has a somewhat turbulent past, as his father was Abe Saffron, a notorious mob boss in Australia. When Abe died at 86 in 2006, he left a lucrative inheritance for his son and each grandson, so Alan took advantage of that to take $250,000 from Daniel and open the restaurant. Consequently, Daniel was forced to manage the Burger Kitchen to recover his investment, as his father was just making bad decisions in the kitchen, like buying the patties pre-made and then freezing them.
I don't know why they can't get it through their skulls.
Although Daniel isn't good at the business either. Despite everything, Daniel wants the restaurant to succeed, even though his father doesn't take him seriously. First, you steal money from him and then you ignore him. Come on, Alan. However, if there's one thing the Saffrons all agree on, it's that they needed Ramsay's help, who was actually delighted with the restaurant's location. Unfortunately, that was only the first impression, as the business is losing up to $6,000 a month after just 16 months of existence. In addition, Alan has changed the menu 10 times and has hired more than 20 servers and chefs, hoping to make his business work. But in his opinion, there is a conspiracy among Yelp reviewers to discredit his restaurant.
Oh, Alan, come on, you've been watching too many Bond movies.
Alan, don't you think it's because your business is run by a disastrous family?
My son has a great deal of resentment towards me, and I don't know why.
Okay, this is gonna be hard. After Chef Ramsay orders his food, we see the chaos in the kitchen as Jen is an obstacle for Chef David Blaine and his assistant. And if you're wondering, no, it's not the magician David Blaine. As for the burgers, Ramsay soon discovers that the meat was raw in the middle, so he immediately sends them back. Outraged by this, Alan blames David, who in turn blames him for pressuring him. Here, everyone blames everyone else, and no one takes responsibility. End of story. Gordon continues with the cowboy burger, and I think they took the name quite literally as the meat is the size of a hat. What's better than spending $39 for a burger you can't even bite into? By this time, Alan had only one last bullet left to impress Chef Ramsay, his wonderful Australian meat pie.
One word for this. Meow. Cat food. Disgusting.
There goes your last chance, Alan. After that, Ramsay doesn't hesitate to tell David his food was nasty, awful, and bland, qualities you wouldn't expect from an executive chef. David assumes none of that, clarifying that he only follows the recipes his boss sends him and is not allowed to change the ingredients. That response triggers Jen, who accuses him of changing the recipe for a mushroom dish recently.
Mushrooms are important to me. I'm from Poland.
Poland does indeed make a really good mushroom soup. But back to the main topic. David complains that he hasn't received a salary in a long time.
He has been working on the spirit of getting paid.
You can probably see why this restaurant required 2 episodes. In that situation, Ramsay asked David to cook a burger to his liking to test his true culinary level. But while David cooks, Alan cooks a frozen Wagyu burger to prove to Gordon that he can cook too.
That is hideous.
As for David's redemption burger, Ramsay absolutely loves it, giving it a 9 out of 10. David was never the problem, just his bosses.
Jen,
Whatever.
where's she going?
This is ridiculous.
I don't think she liked that opinion.
Thank you.
Forget about the conflict between Alan and his son. The real war is between Jen and Chef David. As they prepare for dinner service, Alan gives Ramsay his book, Gentle Satan, which is about his father and how he wanted to force him into his business. Alan, you're repeating the cycle. Daniel is the night manager of the restaurant, but this time he will have to work alongside his parents. The first conflict arose in a few minutes, as Alan was greeting customers with bad breath. The situation in the kitchen is no better either, as Daniel and David are disorganized receiving tickets, so customers are getting the wrong burgers. Tired of the situation, Daniel starts yelling at David.
I knocked your ass out if you don't stop.
And that's how David lost his job. As customers start leaving because of the lousy service and raw food, David demands his $1,000 check. Since Alan and Jen don't have that amount now, they must turn to their son's money. Again. But his girlfriend Wendy tries to stop them.
It's not your choice.
Alan.
For those few seconds, his mob roots came out. The day wasn't even over, and Daniel burst into tears, tired of so much chaos and responsibility. In the second part of our favorite saga about dysfunctional families, Ramsay confesses that Daniel is the only reason he's still trying to save Burger Kitchen, and motivates him to come back with more determination to no longer tolerate abuse from his parents. The next day, Ramsay sets up a little surprise for the Saffrons and some of the staff in a small theater.
First of all, I wanted to get you out of the restaurant. That was... What better way to do that than bring you to a little theater and...
There's your evil haters, Alan. Real people sharing real opinions about real restaurants. There's even Katie Burbank, Yelp's community manager. One by one, the Yelpers voiced their opinions about their food, calling it, with poor ratings and unnecessarily large portions in an unpleasant meal.
I created the account just to comment on your place because that burger was so disappointing.
Well, maybe that one is a hater. And the worst part is that most of them received emails from Alan threatening them for negatively criticizing his restaurant, to the point that he wanted to report them to the police. Alan's expression speaks for itself. But Jen, what do you think? Okay, there's no way these owners are going to save their business. Instead of accepting the criticism, Alan continues with his theory that they are defaming his restaurant, which starts a new argument with his son. In the end, Eric Greenspan, owner of the Foundry on Melrose restaurant, was needed to make Alan understand that the Yelpers' criticisms are not personal attacks, but positive feedback to improve the food. But back at the restaurant, another family problem erupts when Gordon asks who the real owner is. At that point, Daniel heads off to get the checkbook, while Wendy complains that his parents keep all the business income and refuse to share it with their son.
You're a liar!
Seeing how they treat his girlfriend, Daniel explodes with frustration.
Man, you're killing me.
Is it so hard to get along with your daughter-in-law?
I can't get along with her.
You've got to be kidding me. Faced with that situation, Ramsay confesses that he was reading Gentle Satan and discovered that Alan described his father the same way that Daniel describes him. Thanks to that, Alan realizes that his pride is only hurting, and along with his wife, he decides to make peace with Wendy for the sake of their business. After that, Gordon can concentrate on teaching the staff how to cook a special burger made with freshly ground beef, totally different from the frozen Wagyu. During dinner service, Daniel takes over expediting on his own, but his father interrupts him again, as usual. Although after a little chat with Gordon, Alan returns to the kitchen to congratulate everyone on their hard work. Daniel manages to deliver the specials to the end of the day, and beyond the fact that there were some complications, he proved that night that he has the spirit of an owner. The next day, the staff is introduced to the new Burger Kitchen, which left behind that depressing atmosphere and ugly green walls to become a place with beautiful pop art murals and a dine-in group style. But best of all is the implementation of a POS device that will help them organize their tickets 1,000 times better. Seeing so many positive changes, Alan is moved to tears, beyond the attitude of many owners. As for the new and hopefully definitive menu, it contains fewer dishes than the old one, but is full of delicious and fresh burgers. But now is the moment of truth, the relaunch, for which Gordon invited bloggers from various review sites, such as Yelp, Urban Spoon, Chow, and others. Faced with this challenge, Daniel takes over expediting, puts his mother as host and his father behind the bar. That way, orders start coming out of the kitchen quickly, and the bloggers love the new food. All was going well until Alan shows up in the kitchen, and as soon as he's kicked out, he's chatting with the diners.
I'm an owner. I'm not a vegetable.
Well, he has a point. But his enthusiasm ends up messing up the delivery of the dishes, so Daniel has to remind him of his position as the burgers go out without his supervision. Consequently, a raw burger is returned to the kitchen, forcing Alan to step aside. Thanks to that, Daniel and the staff achieved a successful relaunch, and better yet, positive reviews. Because of that, Gordon makes Alan and Jen promise to let his son leave the restaurant completely. In the end, Gordon advises Daniel that beyond what his father did to him, he must learn to forgive him.
Okay, don't forget. I won't. But forgive.
And with this beautiful moment, we end the Burger Kitchen saga. But did Alan and Jen really let their son work in peace? Was his business able to thrive? What happened to the Burger Kitchen after the show? Unfortunately, Alan's dream didn't last long. After the show, many people visited the restaurant in search of the new burgers, but found a different menu. No trace of the POS system, and other changes from the episode. Yelp reviews didn't improve much either, as before its closure, Burger Kitchen had a 2.9 rating, with most Yelpers agreeing that while the service was efficient, the food was pretty meh. According to an LA Eater article from late 2011, Burger Kitchen was under new management that came from the Libertine restaurant, and along with chef Dan Murray, they intended to give the place a new look with an emphasis on drinks. Unfortunately, it didn't achieve much success either, so they had to close it down in February of 2012. Just 1 year after the original episode was filmed, Burger Kitchen was gone. To this day, the property looks empty on Google Maps, but is occupied by a Greek restaurant called Thea, which enjoys a 3.9 stars on Yelp, and is quite popular for its drinks. So what happened to the Saffrons? While there isn't much current information about them, we have proof that Alan and Daniel didn't reconcile after the show. On the Trellis page, we can find a September 2013 report about a lawsuit by Daniel against his father, either for fraud or breach of contract. The details are not entirely clear, but according to the event history, the case was dismissed in December 2014. Since then, there is not much more information about them besides the fact that Alan passed away in 2020 at the age of 71 from a heart attack. In his obituary, there are some interesting details, such as before acquiring his restaurant, he was in the entertainment industry and was a manager of Tobin Bell, better known as Jigsaw. He also owned Polaris Entertainment and co-produced several films with Atlantic Studios, so he had contact with stars like Robert Downey Jr. and Rob Steiger. But he still didn't forget his restaurant dream. Beyond your mistakes, Alan, I'm sure you are a better father than yours. And what happened to the rest of the family? There is much less information about them. And as you know, the internet is flooded with fake profiles of Kitchen Nightmares participants. In this case, the only reliable information comes from Alan's obituary, which mentions that Gwen is alive and that Wendy was officially his daughter-in-law, so we can deduce that she and Daniel were married. Also, there are mentions of grandchildren, but let's remember that Alan had other children. Still, part of me wants to believe that Daniel and Wendy became parents. Speaking of them, Wendy had a small acting career in 4 movies according to her IMDb profile. On the other hand, there is a video from late 2011 where we see Daniel singing in the kitchen while being recorded by one of his employees. And that's all we have on the Saffrons. If you're wondering about the whereabouts of Chef David, I'm sorry to tell you there's no information about him other than theories and a fairly well-known chef with the same name, but that's not him. Thus, we come to the end of the Burger Kitchen saga, one that unfortunately didn't have a successful future, but still gave us some of the best moments of the show. And remember, look for someone who supports you as much as Wendy supported Daniel. Don't accept anything less than that.